was sitting there. Not only was he sitting there remembering the deliverance of Egypt, he was sitting there knowing what he was going to do the very next day. For the people, for redemption, for you and I, for the disciples. So all these things, all these wonderful, fantastic things are taking place, and Jesus is sitting there at that Passover Seder table. The meal has been finished. They probably discussed all kinds of things. They probably went over a whole lot of things, and there's a whole lot of little things that take place. And now they come to the very last part of the feast, where everything, the feasting's basically over. You just grab a bit of that bread, and you break that bread, and Jesus is saying, eat this, because this is in remembrance of me, of the sacrifice of the things that I'm going to be doing for you. And after the bread is broken, then you grab the very last cup, and everybody takes a sip from the last cup. And he said, drink this, because this cup is a cup of my blood that's shed for you. And it's interesting. I did a little bit of research on the cups, and in the Bible, when it talks about a cup, it can mean different things, but often it can be a symbol of God's judgment, or it could be a symbol of God's blessing. There's different things that can be represented by the cup. So I'm going to just read this here to you. Hopefully it'll make more sense than if I just ramble on. Throughout the Hebrew Scriptures, the cup is often used as a symbol of God's judgment. For example, the cup of fury, the cup of judgment, the cup of trembling, and the cup of horror and desolation appear throughout the Old Testament. Yet, we also find the psalmist crying out, I will take up the cup of salvation and call upon the name of the Lord. So the symbol of the cup carries with it pictures of both wrath and redemption, of judgment and blessing. None of these references mentions the Passover, yet the themes of judgment and salvation are woven together beautifully in the Passover story. God poured out his judgment on the Egyptians, but spared the Israelites who obeyed him by placing the blood of the lamb on the doorposts of their houses. Each year, Jewish families retell these events through the Seder. So I'm just going to carry on here a little bit. It says, yet how the cup of Passover symbol remains a mystery. We do know that the time Jesus observed the Passover written in the cup during the meal was an official part of the observance. In fact, they're trying to figure out just exactly where the 4 cups or that actually came in. But I'm just going to skip that because that's not too important for tonight. Each time the cup was filled, it had a different name. Opinions vary as to what certain cups actually symbolize. Most agree that the first cup is the Kiddush, which means sanctification. With this cup, we begin the Passover. The second cup is called the cup of plagues. The third cup is referred to either as the cup of redemption or the cup of blessing. And the fourth cup is often called the cup of praise. But the interesting thing is when we look at these different cups, what was meant for us was judgment. Because we had broken God's covenant, because we had walked away from God, because we were in disobedience to God, we deserved a cup of judgment. But in reality, Jesus gave us a cup of blessing. Isn't that awesome? Mm-hmm. So when we are taking communion, I think it goes deeper, it goes further when we remember that it's not about it's not just about us, it's about what God's done for us. It's about what was meant by what God did for us. He came and absolutely set us free. He came to absolutely give us life. He came to give us blessing. He came to give us all the things that we didn't deserve. Because in reality, we deserve to be judged. We deserve God's judgment. But God gives us his blessing. And so, really, when we're having communion, what are we doing? We're remembering the fact that Jesus took our judgment, took what we deserved, took what was really our portion to take. He took that for himself and gave us instead a cup of blessing. Isn't that awesome? Mm-hmm. We would have, most of us here don't have any Jewish lineage, maybe a few of us have a little bit. But for most of us, we wouldn't have any hope of knowing what salvation was all about. We would be completely, utterly lost, except for Jesus. And so tonight, it's good for us to remember we get used to it. We sit in churches, we hear preaching, we hear about God's good salvation, we hear all this stuff for year after year after year. We kind of become accustomed to it, we kind of become normalized to it. It becomes just something that we kind of go through. But every now and then we have to get to a place where we remember, if it wouldn't be for Jesus, I wouldn't be here. If it wouldn't be for Jesus, I wouldn't have a chance. Right? And in 2019, I know that for a lot of us, there's things in our lives that we want to see gone. There's things in our lives that we want to see change. There's things in our lives that we expect God to change, and that's good, because I believe He wants to do that. But first of all, you need to remember that Jesus really took our punishment. He took what we deserved and took that on Himself, and gave us the ability to even start fresh and new. I do like the Jewish timeline, because when they have Passover, that's their new year, spiritually. In the fall, in September, when in the Feast of Tabernacles, that's for Rosh Hashanah. That's when the civic year starts. But in Passover, that's their spiritual rebirth. And so we could make that a little bit similar this evening, couldn't we? It's the start of a new year. We're remembering what Jesus did. We're remembering the fact that He came and what He came for. And we're remembering the fact that without Him, nothing for us is really possible in 2019. We have no hope without Him. Nothing changes without Him. We're stuck without Him. We're hopelessly lost without Him. So let's just tonight, when we're taking communion, Brother Doug, when you bring your men up, or Josh and Justin are going to help pass us out, and let's tonight realize the fact that I do believe that there is healing, that there is deliverance, that there is things that can happen. But the most important thing is for us to remember the fact that what Jesus gave was everything, and that it's really the start. It's not. It's the start. When you look at that whole story of redemption, that was the first step. After that comes the born again, baptism, burial, resurrection, all that stuff. Then comes the infilling, and the learning how to live, right? But none of that would be possible if it wouldn't have been for the freedom that God gave. Okay, so we are at different times in our lives. We are at different stages. I think we go through different times when we have deliverance, when we get reborn, or we get renewed, we get reinvigorated, and we start fresh, and then as time goes on, God decides to do a deeper cleaning, takes another layer of, shows us another layer of stuff that needs to come off, and we kind of go through the same process again. That happens, I think, on a regular basis. Should happen on a regular basis if we're growing in God. And but let's remember tonight. Let's just remember the fact that the things that we have here, the little bit of bread and a little bit of grape juice, is we're remembering the fact that Jesus' body was broken so that we could be set free. Amen. Set free. So that we could begin the journey of living the way that He wanted us to live. So that we could become the people that He wanted us to become. Right? As most of us know by now, that it's more than just saying a prayer and everything's going to be fine. Right? It's about saying a prayer and then living a life.
That's right.
And believing in God and trusting in God. And allowing Him to change who you are. Allowing Him to change how you think and why you think the way you think. It's the hardest thing to do, is changing the way you think.
Yeah. Amen.
Amen? Amen. I could go down a whole other rabbit trail, but I guess. How long was I supposed to go? 9 o'clock, was it? Okay. Amen. But let's tonight, I think what we should do is we should all come forward, and why don't we come forward, stand down, we're not a great crowd of people tonight. And we're just gonna take some time remembering what God has done, remembering the fact that this is the beginning of our freedom in Him, our deliverance in Him, and this is where we go, we carry on from here.